turned away from that. So, you know, it's an interesting thing, especially with the new Clone Wars, and there had been story reels that were released for the Bad Batch, and that's changed, you know, since then. And it's interesting to see how some fans, they're turning to the dark side because they're sniffing out they're finding conspiracies where there are none, where it's literally, for example, this whole thing about Padme nose art on a gunship. That scene does not build off the new scene with Padme and Anakin. And the Padme and Anakin scene does not build off the nose art scene. You know, when you see them together in the cut, you're like, one's got to go because you have this much time in the episode and you have to create an impression that propels you forward in the story. And when you have 12 episodes to lead to our finale, which is a very, very eventful, very epic, huge finale with very specific story points, you can't have 2 points about Padme that undercut each other. It's got to be one or the other with a definite color that brings you through, that gives you momentum in a direction that brings Anakin into Revenge of the Sith, not a non sequitur about nose art. Now, if we had 2-3 seasons, you could put the nose art in another episode; it'd be fine. You know what I mean? Because it's a really funny scene. It's cute. They came up with both scenes, but ultimately they don't build on each other. The example I give is the scene with Luke constructing his lightsaber in Return of the Jedi and Vader calling out to him, and you get the feeling, you get the story of like, oh my God, ever since The Empire Strikes Back, Vader's been calling out in the Force, and Luke has been trying to purge that from his mind, and he's building a lightsaber. It's an amazing scene. It's an amazing moment, but it's not right for the movie because if you knew he had a lightsaber, then there's no drama when he gets the lightsaber on the skiff and fights on Jabba's barge. There's no drama there. You know, like the whole thing of grabbing the lightsaber and lighting up its green, which tells the whole story and tells it at the right time. That's what you do, and that's what filmmaking is. That's what TV shows are. I mean, I could show you guys I have old cuts of Battlestar Galactica. I have old scripts. I have old cuts of Being Human episodes, and there are wonderful moments. And sometimes they're great, but then when you see them back to back with other moments, you're like, these two moments actually undercut each other. We got to pick one, and you cut a scene. So it's funny to me though that the fans, their own, you know, some of them, not obviously not all of them. Star Wars fans are very sweet, but there are people whose their own anger,
agendas,
their whatever is going on in their life is being channeled hardcore into these things, and they're seeing conspiracies and censorship where there just isn't any. It's just the filmmaking process, and they're getting what I would love is for people to look at that filmmaking process and become interested by it and be like, man, I'd like to do that, you know, rather than that's the way it was and they're changing the intent. Be like, dude, it's not the intent until it comes out,
right?
And if you don't understand that these two moments undercut each other, maybe that's why you have a different job and Dave has that job. Maybe, and you're probably better at your job than Dave is at that job, but he's actually better than you at storytelling. You know what I mean? Yeah. For me, it was obvious. I'm like, you can't have both.
It's like, you know, actually exactly what you're saying is the way that the universe works. You know, we call it the wave function, right? The wave function of probability. There's a million things, but only one can be real once it's observed.
It's the multiverse, right?
Yeah,
the most fascinating thing about film and television and making these stories is that talent isn't 2020 hindsight. It isn't people making a YouTube video about how Phantom Menace could have been better. That's no talent. There's no talent involved there because you're seeing a finished product and then you're saying, well, it would have been better if you nudged this or did that or did that. Talent is being on a set. There's money being burned. There's time being spent, and you have a limited amount of time, and you're going. The train is moving, and making more right calls than wrong calls when you're on the set. That's what talent is. You know, the actors, the directors, the producers that I've seen that pull off those moments, and you think it's so clear when you see the movie. It's got music in, it's got effects, it's all clear what it's supposed to be, but it's never clear when you're doing it. It's never clear when you're making it. When you're making it, you're making the best calls you can make, and if you can make more good calls than bad calls, guess what? You're talented. You're good at this.
Yeah.
But it's very funny. I've definitely worked with people who were huge on critiquing certain movies and say, "Oh, they shouldn't have done that," or "They should have done this."
I'm guilty of that myself.
I've worked with those people, and the moment you start writing something with them, or you start working on this, and you notice, oh, they have no idea what they're doing. Right. You're good at critiquing a final product, but you don't know when you're in the middle of this. Your instincts are no better honed than anyone's, and it's only experience in doing that makes you better at making the right calls versus the wrong. I mean, when you work with less experienced directors, it's funny because they're so white-knuckled. And they're so afraid that they're going to make the wrong call that when you make a suggestion to them, they're like, no. Then you work with someone like Dave Filoni, who's more experienced. And you go, Dave, I think Maul should say this, this, and this. And he goes, yeah, because you think that Maul's about that. And it's all about your ego, isn't it, Sam? But we can try it. Okay, we can try it. And then we do it. And he's like, okay, well, maybe a little Sith is going to make it in there after all. You never know. And then you find,
but that's the collaboration magic.
He'll give you crap for it, but then he will hear you out.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some things in the finale that there was a whole thing that I pitched. I can't talk about it yet, but there's a whole thing in the finale, very, very important moment. And I'm like, there's something bumping me about that. And I couldn't describe why, because why? The time is rolling. The train has left the station. We're all trying to get this done and we don't have time. And I'm like, and I got a hold of Dave a day or two before and I'm like, it's bumping me. I don't know why. And he's like, you're overthinking it. But then 2 days later, we're recording it, and he goes, "Oh wow, I'm so glad you." I was like, "There's something there." Yeah, it is bumping. What if it's this? He says, and it was like a brilliant suggestion. He came up with a brilliant solution. I'm like, that's it. And I didn't know why. It was an instinct in the back of my head. Something's not right about that. It could be better. And then Dave nailed it on the day, and that's talent. Nailing it on the day is talent. It's kind of like you can sing as well as you want in the shower. But then you get in front of an audience. Can you do it? Maybe not.
Yeah. So look, unfortunately, we are also pressed for time.
Sorry.
But man, this has been amazing.
I feel like we're just getting started.
I have one last question for you about the DC Universe All-Star Games. But before I get to that, hopefully maybe you can find it in your schedule to come back after the Clone Wars finale wraps and we can chat some more. And, I'm sure, we only got to 2 questions.
So sorry of the 3,000.
Well, no, I think we'll save it for next
What is it?
3,000.
Wait. The delegation of the 3,000. That should be enough for your committee. Is that what he says in the deleted scene when he tells Padme to go?
I'm not sure. I mean, that's like
where they're standing in his office and she's wearing that interesting outfit.
There's another thing. Those scenes with the delegation that were against the war that were trying to talk to Palpatine. Great scenes.
Yeah.
Love them. They don't belong in the movie, but they're great scenes.
Right.
Great pieces of Star Wars lore. But you have to make those decisions.